skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, media agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today. Exciting news! The Design Studio on Nationwide 90 FM just got a whole lot bigger. Join us this and every Saturday now from 1 to 3 p.m. for an exclusive show that elevates your home, mind, and soul. Discover the latest interior design trends to create your dream sanctuary. Unlock your true potential with personal growth strategies. Nourish your body and spirit with expert wellness tips. Don't miss out on the inspiration you need to live your best life. Tune in to the Design Studio this and every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. and take the first step towards a more fulfilling you.
Make me sweat, make me harder.
Come into the parlor, there's a welcome there for you.
Welcome to the Mayor's Parlor with Desmond McKenzie.
From 1 to 6 p.m. every Sunday, you'll now get more of your favorite vintage music.
Put your head on my shoulder.
Nationwide 90 FM will transform your Sunday into a musical time machine that will take you way back.
Come on, let's go back in time.
This magic moment.
Journey into yesteryear with Desmond McKenzie in the Mayor's Parlor.
I've got the music to jog your memory and make you smile.
Put your sweet lips a little closer to the phone.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the best in vintage music.
Coming to the Mayor's Parlor every Sunday between 1 and 6 p.m. here on Nationwide 90 FM, a revolution in media.
Those oldies but goodies reminds me of you.
None of mercy. This one is very classic, dedicated to all the schoolers who are taking beats.
If you've ever struggled to pass an exam, then you'll know that students today are under great pressure to get good grades and secure qualification needed to move on to higher education. The problem is that too many students are struggling alone and could really benefit from connecting with hardworking teachers and other bright students in other parts of the country and the region. Join me, Dennis Brooks, this and every Friday evening from 8 to 9, with a repeat on Saturday morning from 8 to 9. For the A-Team, a study group on radio, my team of teachers, students, and experts will break down the syllabus, giving you information, tips, and past paper questions that will help you get top grades in your upcoming exams. Follow us on Facebook Live and on Twitter and be a part of the community. It's the A-Team, Fridays at 8 p.m. with a repeat at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. It's your free extra class on radio and social media. And it's right here on Nationwide 90 FM, the revolution in media.
Me sing, boop, boop, boop. Every pressure who know more. You illiterate and foolish, you might on a cook. And you not gonna get no work.
Good evening, Jamaica. Welcome to another episode of the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide at 90 FM. This is Damien Scarlett, and I'll be taking you through the program this evening, 8:05, going up until 9 p.m. tonight. Welcome to another great show, and as per usual, this is the program where we look at the study tips, going through the syllabus, looking at exam questions as we get our students ready for the new academic year and for the external examination in CXC and CAPE. This evening, we are going to be focusing on Caribbean studies. We're in the month of October, and so I know September was a time for everyone to, settle in and get used to the new program and the new classes. But, we are moving ahead at this time. And this evening, I have with me one of I call him our resident teacher aide, right, on this great show. we have Mr. Kevin Thompson with us, who is a Caribbean Studies teacher, great teacher at the Immaculate Conception High School, and he has been teaching for over 20 years, best believe. So no greater person to come and talk to us about Caribbean Studies than Mr. Thompson. He's also an author, co-author of the Collins Caribbean Studies Revision Guide, one of the best-selling Cape texts on the market, and involved with marking CXC exams as well. Welcome, Kevin. How are you?
Greetings, Damien. Thank you for having me again.
Yes,
doing great.
Wonderful. How's the school year been for you? I know for a number of teachers, getting back into the classroom and getting settled, how has that been going?
Boy, I give God thanks, I just give God thanks that I'm one of the premier high schools in Jamaica, and, we're highly organized.
Yes.
And we've gotten the school year off to a great start. Can't complain at all.
I love that. So we're looking at Caribbean studies, and we know that in terms of just the syllabus and its component, exposing the students to different areas of the Caribbean society as a whole, looking at economic development, literature and thought, and language and all of that. And as we get into it, why should the students study Caribbean studies? In fact, I would ask you to define Caribbean studies first, as students transition from fifth form to sixth form. Why is this necessary?
Okay, that's actually a great question, Damien. And to be honest, the students, especially our science students, tend to ask this very question.
Yes.
Why are we being forced now to do history and sociology when we thought that we were over the arts or the humanities from lower school? Well, Caribbean Studies, Damien, it was conceptualized to really help our young adults, to matriculate into society, not necessarily to a university or tertiary level learning, but really into society, get to understand society more and how society operates, and get over some of the misconceptions that they would have had, as Jamaicans living and learning through our communities. So Caribbean Studies is really about, examining the foundational development of the Caribbean and looking how we can better contribute to help further the development of the Caribbean as a whole, and not necessarily looking at national development now as, say, civics or social studies would really look at.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at regional integration and how the Caribbean can move as one unit into trying to create the kind of development that all Caribbean nationals can benefit from. And just to help the doctors, the budding lawyers, engineers, teachers, just to help them to see their place in all of this development and look at what they can contribute to help further the Caribbean. So it's really about development, Damien, even though it involves so many disciplines in the one subject.
Right, and we're going to explore some of those disciplines, and in the context of the society, really looking at a group of people who would have interacted over time in a specific space, and looking at their purpose and their goals, as I say, in the context of development. But when we come to Caribbean studies, there are some, what you call it now, interdisciplinary approaches or perspective, or let me use the term components, because we're being exposed to history, geography, and also elements of economics. So what are some of the approaches that students should take, especially teachers, when it comes on to this subject in sixth form?
Well, Damien, I'd like all parents out there to know that different schools take a different approach to teaching the syllabus. Caribbean Studies syllabus. And they shouldn't necessarily get worried when they hear that an Immaculate is doing it this particular way to now compare it to what their child's school is doing to say, oh no, this is not how we should approach it. Because you can approach it from different angles. The stance that we took at Immaculate is to have one teacher teach the syllabus and have the students take a more holistic approach to the syllabus instead of looking at the particular disciplines, but from the start of the syllabus, looking at the focus, the rationale of the syllabus, which is to create an understanding of Caribbean development and, help the students to move forward in, seeing where they can contribute. But there are schools that will teach a sociology component separate from a history component, separate from a geography, and then, looking at the tail end of the syllabus, how all of that ties into development, which is not a bad approach either. I mean, you can take that. But we teach the subject how the students are expected to write their essays. So there's no, let us say then, Damian, there's no history essay on a Caribbean Studies exam. There is no sociology essay or, the students will not be exposed to a geography essay. But what the essays will ask is, how can geographical phenomena then impact development in the Caribbean?
Right.
Or how can the migratory movement of the various racial and ethnic groups into the Caribbean, which is history, impact development of the Caribbean culture up to the 1900s. So there's no one subject being studied, but the focus will always be on development and how all areas of the syllabus combined then, contribute to development of the Caribbean. The history component, sociology, geography, the economics component, even sports. So it's very important for the students to always have that insight instead of saying, I'm going to answer the history essays because I'm a history student.
Right.
Or, I was top of my class in geography, so I'm looking to answer the geography, essays. They'll be disappointed if they go into the exam with that mindset.
Yes, I'm thanks for that. And I know notice you would have mentioned earlier on about the different geographical regions, but would that also expand to the diaspora?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yes.
Which is actually considered part of the Caribbean, Damian?
Yes.
We're looking at parts of Canada and the United States of America and even England. And we're telling our students now that there's a growing diaspora in Japan. Jamaican diaspora and Caribbean diaspora in Japan. The JET teaching program have had quite a few of our Caribbean nationals, trekking over there and forming mini Caribbean communities, which we would consider part of the diaspora. So definitely we look at that as well, and we look at the Caribbean influence there, and we don't leave out our people living in the diaspora. We look at their contribution to Caribbean development, and should we migrate, how we would contribute to Caribbean development living in, any part of the diasporic Caribbean.
Right, I want you to hold that point as we take our first break, and when we come back, we'll pick up that conversation about the diaspora community being a part of our development process. This is the A-Team Radio Show. We'll be right back after these messages.
You illiterate and foolish, you might on a cook, and you not gonna get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me gunny with a purse, I eat you off a joke. If I see them, I hold your red and guilty.
Outperform, outlast. Guilty. With top performance. Guilty. Jack comma. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Pan select tools, free parts and free repairs. Free parts, free repairs. In 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-61114. Delta Supply, we service what we sell.
Are you ready to turn your sales and marketing skills into high earnings? Nationwide 90 FM is searching for business development executives to build lasting client relationships. If you have experience across all stages of the sales cycle and possess strong communication, negotiation, and time management skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, media agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today.
Me sing, bup, bup, bup. And if you pressure on no more, you illiterate and foolish, you might on a cook. And you not gonna get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me granny with a purse, I eat you off a joke. If I see them, I hold your red and big.
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide 90 FM. This is Damien Scarlett sitting in for Dennis Brooks. Just before the break, my guest this evening, Kevin Thompson, a teacher at the Immaculate Conception High. We are focusing on Caribbean studies. Just before the break, we were touching on that point about the diaspora community being a part of our Caribbean development. I know as a part of that, we talk about things relating to migration, and thus the movement of the Caribbean people, So when you leave here and you go overseas, how do you contribute to the overall development of not only the nation but the Caribbean at large? So I want Sir Kevin to pick up on that point and then just to carry us into the learning perspective and the teaching perspective as it relates to Caribbean studies. So go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, sure, Damien. Yes, man. You seem to be asking a lot of questions, Damien, that the
Yes.
students would really be pushing at us teachers, especially at this first part of the syllabus. Now looking at the Caribbean diaspora, and first of all, let me start with migration. Caribbean people are migratory people. Migration is a big part of our culture.
Yes.
And, looking back at our history from the indigenous Amerindians, we see where we can trace their migratory movements into the Caribbean, starting from around 25,000 years ago. We look at the migration of the Europeans in the Caribbean, starting with the Spanish. And, of course, we also can see where African people, though their migration was not necessarily voluntary, we also view our coming as Africans into the Caribbean as one of the largest migratory movements of people, or some people call it a displacement of people in the history of the world. So migration is a big part of our culture and a big base and reason for the Caribbean that we have today, the diversity in terms of the various ethnic groups and the melting pot of cultures.
Right.
Migration is just part of our culture. And we see now where people will mostly migrate because of economic reasons, So our contribution,
yes,
or the diaspora's contribution to the Caribbean is largely looked at from the economic perspective, through remittances. I don't know if you remember during the time of COVID, Damien, remittances overtook, was it tourism or mining?
Yes.
As one of the largest foreign exchange earners and one of the biggest contributors to our economy, So in that very way, we see migration having a direct impact on Caribbean societies, and also yes, go ahead, Damien.
Right. I just wanted to, in that same light, though, when you look at migration, would migration be seen as a global challenge, or can it be seen as a global challenge? I mean, you leave one area to go to another. someone benefits ultimately, but it can be seen as a challenge.
You know, Damian, one of the things I encourage my students to do is always look on the positive aspect of not only migration but any Caribbean phenomena, you know? And let us look at the movement of Caribbean people to other parts of the world as we're looking at migration, you know? And let us even look beyond remittances, which is a direct contributor to Caribbean economies. Without migration, Damian, people around the world wouldn't know about the Caribbean. You know? I mean, when we look at our people and our stalwarts, you know, in New York, in Florida, you know, all over, we see where these Caribbean businessmen and businesswomen are actually bringing Caribbean people and our culture to other parts of the world, and they are now sparking an interest in these people, right, of the Caribbean, and these people are now taking them, their families, and taking themselves to the Caribbean to experience what we have to offer. Just as I saw where they're going to open another juicy parties in
New York.
They have one in Florida already, right?
Right.
So, you know, we see the interest in Caribbean food and culture growing as a result of the migration that has taken place over the years.
And so this is an opportunity then, amidst the challenges, this is an opportunity then to boost development further.
Oh, absolutely, Damian.
Right.
Yes, man.
All right. So apart from looking at migration as well, you'd have touched on the connection between the Caribbean diaspora rather and or homeland, but in the context of just even migration, since we're on that, how should students look towards this aspect of the syllabus, and for teachers who are teaching the subject, what's the right take or the most appropriate take that they can have on this?
All right, so we are actually now looking at migration as immaculate.
Yes.
You know, and looking at the various migratory groups which would have come into the Caribbean, the reasons why they came, and the main focus of why we look at migration, Damian, in the context of the syllabus, is to have the students understand why the Caribbean took the developmental path that it really started on. You know, for example, why is it that we are seeing in the Caribbean that we are so Europeanized? You know, we are majority African descendants in the Caribbean, yet we are so Europeanized. We speak a European language. Our school system is based on European structures. Our religion, you know, we look at our politics, not only the electoral system, but the, you know, constitutional monarchies that we have and the various systems of government, they are Europeanized. And the migration would have explained that. We saw where the Europeans came to establish economic systems, but before they could establish economic systems, they had to establish a strong political hold on the region. You know, that was part of their way of claiming the region, right?
Yes.
And in establishing a political hold, they have to make sure that there's continuity of their dominance. And the way that they did that was to dominate education, right? And to filter any other form of education out of the Caribbean, and to ensure that the European educational structure is the one that remained dominant. And they were pretty successful at it, because we still retain basically, you know, most of what they imparted on us. So when we have our young people looking at the Caribbean and saying, why is it so Europeanized? Why is it so hard for us to get African and Indian and Asian culture as part of the mainstream? We can explain it to them, you know, and we can then say, how can we really now go around changing the European imprint, or do we need to, you know? And we can say, okay, how do you see yourself playing a part in changing the Caribbean, European, what I'd call dominance, you know, and is it beneficial?
Right, and then you look at through that now you look at the greater integration then, because even as I heard you mention that, you know, what came back to memory were the different terms that relate to some of the languages, for example, like the Anglophones and you know, which talk about the language English speaking in the British colonies, and then when you move into a different era, when you study languages in across different society groups, you have an appreciation for their kind of culture, their kind of setting, and you're able to somewhat adjust, if I can put it that way. So as you said, that this whole aspect of development, when you look at it in Caribbean studies, it helps us in our own individual development for those persons who leave from Jamaica and go into some of these other territories. You know, you're able to function because you'd have had that kind of knowledge from before.
Absolutely, yes, Damien. Absolutely.
Right.
You know.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just adding to that, Damien. Migration, as a start in looking at the Caribbean Studies syllabus, also explains the social structures that we would have been experiencing, you know, in the Caribbean to this day. And, you know, as young adults, we can go out in the world feeling very frustrated. You know, why is it so difficult to attain a certain level as a young black man? Or, you know, the Caribbean Studies migration and the structures that were, you know, basically implemented by the Europeans explains all of this. And then we would have asked the students, you know, how then can you create a breakthrough rather than waiting on one to be provided for you? Create a breakthrough now that you understand the system and how it operates. How can you then create a breakthrough with the education that you've attained, you know, and create opportunities for yourself right here in the Caribbean using the same European structures that we sometimes complain about, you know? So it's really a subject that we use to empower the young people going out in the world, Damien. Whether or not you plan to continue at University of the West Indies or anywhere in the world, you know, having this base subject or having this subject as a base of your education really helps you to see the world differently. And instead of being discouraged, it empowers you to tackle the world, you know, and see your contribution as being important out there, you know, in the world and the Caribbean. Yes.
Right. Well, we're upon that break. So when we come back from this break, we're going to be continuing our conversation as we look at Caribbean studies, and we also want to touch on aspects of the syllabus. What do you need to know as you approach your Caribbean studies syllabus in this quarter of the academic year? This is the A-Team Radio Show. We'll be right back after this.
Every pressure who know you illiterate and foolish, you might turn a cook, and you not go get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me granny with a purse.
You've weathered the storm, but rebuilding and preparing for back to school have taken a toll. It's time to get some money in your pocket. At Chris and Charles, we understand your financial needs. With just a quick call, you can access funds to catch up on bills and cover unexpected expenses. Our process is fast, simple, with funds deposited in your account in no time. Don't stress, get money in your pocket. Call 876-926-0609 or visit our website today. Conditions apply. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles.
Are you ready to turn your sales and marketing skills into high earnings? Nationwide 90 FM is searching for business development executives to build lasting client relationships. If you have experience across all stages of the sales cycle and possess strong communication, negotiation, and time management skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, media agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today.
Me sing, every pressure who know you illiterate and foolish, you might turn a cook, and you not go get no work, and your teeth like a puss.
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show on Nationwide 90 FM, the best revolution station in Jamaica. And if you are just joining us, we are focusing on Caribbean studies this evening. This is Damien Scarlett. I have with me on the line Kevin Thompson, a great veteran, a teacher of this course, teaching for over 20 years, listeners and viewers. So he's well versed on this course. Just before the break, we were getting an idea of social structures as we were talking about that. So when you come across things relating to race and class and ethnicity, it helps us to understand the social structure of the Caribbean. Am I right, Kevin? Because I'm learning and I'm going along.
Definitely. You sound like a pro student, man.
Wow. But I know we'd have touched on the migration and talking about the wider context of development. And, as we listen to the news more and more, what came to mind during the break as we touched on the diaspora, there are conversations about getting people in the diaspora more involved in the general affairs of the country, perhaps on the political front as well. That's another conversation for another time. But as we look at it, is that something that we can look to? Is that a conversation that we need to have? And I know we're going to be moving to looking at the syllabus, and I just wanted to get that kind of perspective.
That's an important question, Damien, because it's something that we actually discussed in looking at the diasporic definition of the Caribbean.
Right.
We have to look at the fact that, we saw where there were some protests in New York recently, on some policy positions our government have taken. And, our students were discussing whether or not these protests could impact, let us say, a general election.
Right.
And, while many people in the diaspora will not necessarily return to vote, many actually do, return during election time to vote and have an influence or an impact there on our election. We see mostly, Damien, where their voice has an impact, because
definitely.
Of course, definitely they have the finances to influence the direction that their communities that they're from here in Jamaica will take regarding voting. So we really can't
ignore them
or basically not necessarily discredit, but we can't overlook their contribution on policy making and politics in our region. They have a very strong voice, and they are getting more and more organized, the Caribbean people in the diaspora, right? So definitely they are having an impact, and their impact is being felt more and more. And I'm even seeing where the government is taking note of this. And, our Prime Minister would have gone overseas to, have audience with members of the diaspora up until recently.
Right. Yes. And with an aim of, strengthening the relationship and the partnership that we have, or say that we enjoy as a country.
Which is important.
Correct. But let's bring it back home a little bit in the context of the syllabus. Now, we're now in October. We know that the course comes with an SBA, or do we still call it an IA, the internal assessment. Let's talk a little bit about that. How should the students approach the SBA, and why do they need to focus on this so early?
All right. So, again, we talk about the approaches, Damien. And just for our listeners, the SBA, or school-based assessment for Caribbean studies and for most other subjects, is CXC's way of encouraging students to engage in research. All right?
Okay.
Now, the SBA component for Caribbean studies actually carries a big chunk of your overall
marks,
exam grade, or assessment grade. Let me not say exam grade, assessment grade. And it's 40% of the overall grade that you'll attain for your external assessment, right? So the exam carries 60% of your grade, and of course, the internal assessment, as it was formerly called, now SBS, full base assessment, carries 40% of your overall grade. Now, why so early? Again, approaches. Some schools actually start their SBAs around February, March, some in January.
Yes.
You know, but we took the approach at Immaculate to start as early as possible so that we can have the students have opportunities to continue correcting their study as they go along with a view of getting as good a grade as they can going into the exam, you know. And we find that the students appreciate this approach because, again, research, while it will not be something new to our students who did well in CSEC and they are now at tape level, you know, we are taking on a more grand approach to research where we're actually now using the what you call the procedures, the correct procedures to carrying out a research and following them and following the formula strictly and rigidly. And the students will make mistakes along the way, and having it start as early as we start in September will give them opportunities to, you know, be able to perfect their grade. Now, there are about 8 components to the Caribbean Studies SBA. We have an introduction, we have a literature review, data collection sources, presentation of data, analysis of data, we have a discussion of data, we have a conclusion, and of course they look at your overall writing and presentation skills as well. So there are about 8 components.
Yes, well, we're going to try to see if we can and go through that and break it down.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes you mentioned the introduction, and if you want to have a good essay or write a good essay, you must have a strong and a great introduction, I believe, and because it sets the tone for what you are going to be writing about. Sometimes students might not pay close attention to the introduction. You know, why is it necessary for them to do that? Because I know within this, we're looking at like identifying the problem statement, you know, and looking at the purpose of the study. But let me allow you as the expert to talk about that.
Oh man, you sound like the expert as well, Damian.
Yeah, man.
But yes, definitely, Damian, as you rightfully said, that the introduction is an extremely important component, and we don't allow our students to just venture off on doing their introductions on their own. So we will have suggested problem statements or research questions, you know, and they can decide how to alter it, you know, how they want, and they can change their perspective of that. But in terms of their objectives as well, we help them to center their objectives around a community or a school or a business so that they don't go too wide. Because remember now, we're doing a study in about, 7 to 6 months?
Yes.
You know, so they can't look on a topic with the view of assessing a problem or an issue in the wider Caribbean, right? Or in the world, as some students would write, you know. So we have them focus on a school or a community and look at an issue there for study, right?
Okay, so wait. One of the things I'm getting from you then, there's a sequence. So you identify the problem statement and then you move into the background and the research.
Right. So they identify the problem statement. Let us say, for example, to what extent does social media impact the academic performance of students at a named high school?
Yes.
Right? After identifying the problem statement, you would have looked at, okay, what are some reasons why I am looking at this problem? You know, you look at the name high school, maybe social media is an issue there for teachers, PTA, you know, possibly something the ministry have been speaking about, why is it an issue? And then you give a background understanding now of why this issue is, such a hotbed issue in this particular school.
Right.
And then you create a statement called a purpose statement, saying now this is why we are actually pursuing this study.
Right. So the relevance of it then.
Yes. Right. Exactly, Damien. Because, one of the things that we teach the students is that we don't necessarily do research just because we like to find out things. Research
yes.
is definitely called upon by companies who invest millions to actually, help to understand how people think, possibly for the launching of a product, or to help to actually fix a problem in society, right? So we have them, have a purpose, and after the purpose, we have them outline some objectives that will frame the parameters of their study. And normally we ask the students to look at about 4 objectives, because again, there's a word limit for the study, so we can't have them looking at too many things under the one problem statement. Right. So we normally center it around 4 objectives just to keep them a bit focused, for the introduction. And then the students will have to go on and explain why is their study valuable to 2 named agencies. Any 2 named agencies that, they feel this study can be of value to, and they'll have to explain why they believe that it will be of value to these 2 named agencies. For the topic that we just spoke about, social media and academic performance, it could be the Ministry of Education or the Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica. They'll have to outline why now these studying this topic will be important for them.
And then being able to add, I was going to add to that, and said also being able to identify some of the technical terms. So I know you'd have touched on the benefits, and then yes.
Definitely. That section now we call the definition of key terms, and these are terms that in reading your research would possibly, have some people a bit confused if these terms that have double meaning or they're particular to a particular community, right? If they're not clarified, it can lead to confusion, to the person reading your research or looking at your research. So we'll definitely have to clarify those terms in that part of the introduction.
Yes, and one of the things too is that I find that some students have the challenge with is the literature review.
Yes.
I wanted to talk to us a little bit about that, but when we come back from the other side of the break, we're in the final segment of our show. This is the A-Team Radio Show. We'll be right back after this.
Illiterate and foolish, you might turn a cook, and you not gonna get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me granny with a purse, I eat you off a joke. If I see them, I will you.
It's the weekend and the youth are taking over the airwaves. Yes, we are the new voices and faces of the Talk Up You radio show. The voice of the Jamaican youth right here on Nationwide 90 FM.
After a busy week of work and school, come on wine with Jamaica's #1 youth radio show.
We're bringing you entertainment, fun facts, and staying true to youth development and advocacy.
Catch the action each and every Saturday as we roll out buzzy segments. What say you?
Youth for chat,
life skills,
global connect,
and bust the youth.
That's the Talk Up Youth radio show. Saturdays 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM.
Talk Up Youth, Miss Effie.
Talk Up Youth. Don't miss it.
Are you ready to turn your sales and marketing skills into high earnings? Nationwide 90 FM is searching for business development executives to help us grow our business and build lasting client relationships. If you have experience across all stages of the sales cycle and possess strong communication, negotiation, and time management skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, the agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today.
Me sing, and if you pressure on no more, you're illiterate and foolish, you might turn a cook, and you not gonna get no work, and your teeth
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show. You are listening to the voice of Damon Scarlett. And my guest tonight is Kevin Thompson, a teacher of Caribbean Studies. He is an author. He has been in the education system for over 20 years. We are looking at the components of the Caribbean Studies syllabus. We're highlighting the areas that the students need to start working on early. We touched on the introduction just now, where we needed to identify an issue that is relevant to the society, relevant to your communities, looking at the purpose of the study. And now we're kind of just looking at the lit review. And, on this show, we break it down for the students, even for the parents, for them to understand the magnitude of the work that needs to go in when it comes on to research. And research at this stage is I don't want to use the word basic, Kevin, but it helps them to become disciplined, because when you get to university and you talk about research, that is a lot of work, so what they're doing right now is just giving them, it's just whetting their appetite, and if I can put it that way, when it comes on to the level of work at the tertiary level. But let's talk about the lit review for a little bit.
Yes, a very an extremely important component, Damian. And the lit review, it's called lit review, but it's really the literature review is the component where you look at previous research done on your current area of study.
Yes.
And you really look at what the research is saying about the phenomena you're studying, looking at the impact, looking at the causes, looking at the development of the area you're looking at. Now, remember, it's a review and not a summary of the literature, which we often get from students. So students would take a chapter in a book and summarize it or condense it, as we'll often say, and then they present it as a review. But, if you are being asked about a movie or to give a review on a movie, I remember my friend Dennis Brooks would have a program here where he reviews movies,
Yes.
It's not really to give a blow for blow as to what happened in the movie, or a summary, an overall summary or view of what happened. It's really to give an assessment or make an assessment, give an interpretation of your thoughts about the movie in terms of its value, whether it's worth watching, and, what are some of the themes that we see coming out and how are they relevant. And that's really what we're looking at, for the lit review, Damian. And I always say to my students, there are some questions that you have to ask yourself, to complete a review of each piece of literature. There are some questions you have to ask. And these are, how does the piece of literature apply to your particular study?
Right.
And how does the source further my understanding on the topic? Does the source support or oppose any of the variables in my problem statement? How does the source create a platform for me to do future research on the topic? And what is the main flaw? You have to critique the literature. That's part of a review, right?
So the critical thinking component comes into play there.
Oh, yes. Definitely. And then, of course, you have to go on to state, the advantage of using the source or disadvantage, that it may pose to, the understanding. So it's really a critical look at the studies that would have been done on your topic by, experts. And it's very important, Damian, I have to get this in. When we say experts, we're not talking about bloggers and just casual, opinion pieces on your topic. We're talking about peer-reviewed literature, That is what we should focus on as researchers. Those are the type of material that we will go to as researchers.
Yes, as you mentioned about the material, and as the students are selecting the topical issue to write on, sometimes in writing the essay we have a way of having a broad topic. How important is it for us to narrow the topic that we want to zone in on? Because we don't want to be all over the place.
Oh no, it's very important, Damian, and this is why I said earlier that we don't allow the students to just do the introduction by themselves, right? What we do, we try to guide them in narrowing the topic. So instead of looking at, how does social media impact students in the Caribbean, we bring them back to, all right, let us use a sample of the Caribbean and say this sample will represent our view of how this phenomena impacts the wider Caribbean. So we say, what area would you like to look at? Some students may choose their community, some may choose their church, and some may choose their school. Because remember now, if you're looking at the impact of social media on the Caribbean, that's a PhD level study that would take years and would demand considerable amount of investment. You're a high school student looking at really the principles of research. That is what CXC really wants to get out of you. So just focus on a community or a school, or a group or a company with the view of that particular area representing a wider area, and that will suffice.
Yes, I'm loving how you're putting it into context for us. So we'd have touched a little bit on the introduction and also the literature review. Now, you made reference to the kind of critical thinking that is needed in the process, and that kind of goes into the data collection and the fact that the Caribbean Studies program helps them to look at data in terms of quantitative and qualitative data. Sometimes
Definitely.
students get that mixed up, so I wanted to clarify that for us and the kind of instrument that is needed to carry out the data.
Right. Well, definitely, Damian. And, when we are speaking about quantitative, the students tend to shy away from the quantitative data, which, of course, will take significant research to gather. We're talking about looking at figures from official government publications or, agencies like Statin, and actually getting figures through an instrument, data collection instrument such as a questionnaire,
right?
And having to put that information together and then interpret it. So we find getting the students to collect and put together accurate data that represents the area of study is a big problem for us, Damian. And again, we tackle it step by step. The qualitative data, the students have that, as we say in Jamaica, down pat. But having the figures and gathering the figures now is the issue that we have. And as a matter of fact, we have come across students in our workshops, of other schools that actually, we call it in academia, they cook up the data. They make up the data because it's just easier.
Right.
And if you're not really going through the information that they're presenting to see, the discrepancies, you'll not really notice. But we really want to show them the importance of being data-driven. So we often have them use a questionnaire as a source of collecting their data from, a large sample, and we really steer them also to government, official government documents and publications, because they are more the most reliable sources out there.
And we do need them to get sources that are reliable. What came to mind just now as I heard you speaking, and as we seek to wrap up, because we're almost out of time. How does a teacher? I'm not saying that you must reveal the technique that teachers have, but you mentioned about the cooking up of the data, so to speak. Because they want it to look good and to make it look as if that they were putting in the work for the
Oh, yeah.
research. But there must be a way when you look up, when you take that piece of work and you say, no man, something is wrong right here. So
Oh, yes.
they have to fix that.
Absolutely. And, I tell my students there are ways that we find out. But I can tell teachers out there in Jamaica, our big secret is to examine two main components.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, you look at the students' data collection sources segment, which is where they explain why they use the particular data collection instrument, whether they're an interview questionnaire.
Or questionnaire, right?
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And why they use the particular literature that they chose. And you find if their explanations there are a bit vague and wide, you start to do a little bit more digging, right?
There you go. Yes.
So definitely the data collection sources is our go-to to really check. And then, of course, in their presentation of data, oftentimes they're just things that are off. Like you'll see a student saying 90% of the people in a community are suffering from HIV/AIDS. And you're like, huh?
Yes.
There's some things that sound correct to students, but as a teacher, you're reading and you're like, no, these figures not adding up. Where you get this? Which government source?
Right.
And then you'll find out that, no, something is definitely off. So we have our strategies.
All right, love that. So students, if you are pursuing Caribbean studies in this academic year and leading up to the external exam, please do not give your teachers any false data. They have a way of finding out if you are doing the work and linking it back to the sources, and that is important because when you get to university and you start to write research, your sources can't be void. Your paper can't be void of the sources because we need to know where you have gotten that information from, and if you're also citing the sources well. So and that's another thing. But we're almost out of time, and the last thing I want you to say to us, Kevin, at this point in the semester at the syllabus, where should the students be, and just a final encouragement to them.
All right. So students, definitely trust your teacher. That is what I will say. Some of us, we're at migration. Some teachers will still be looking at geographical phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
Some students will see that their teachers haven't started the SBA as yet. But trust the guidance of your teacher. We have a different approach at our school than some. Some may be similar, but just trust your teacher, believe in your teacher, and especially where the SBAs are concerned, work alongside your teacher, and you'll be fine.
All right, thank you for that, Kevin. Work alongside your teacher, and you will be fine. Great way to end that point there. And again, Caribbean studies. We started by looking at the interdisciplinary approach, whether it's from sociology or geography or looking at some of the economic contributors towards the overall development of the Caribbean. That's where we'll leave it for this evening. We are going to have a part 2 because we still need to complete the breakdown of the Caribbean studies syllabus. We only touched the introduction and the lit review and the data collection, and there's much more that we need to look at in terms of how do we present that data. So this is the program that you need to be locked into on a Friday night. I want to say thank you to my guest this evening, Kevin Thompson, teacher at the Immaculate Conception High School, and say thanks to our technical operator Andrew Anderson, and have a great weekend until next week. Shalom, this is Damien Scarlett tuning out.
We look and say, book. If you pressure your book, if you not have no education, people treat you like a book. Turn you in a handy man, dog, food you have to cook. Them no want no candy man, no Barbie can no brook. So big up all the youths, I can't see.
Exciting news! The design